Hello everyone. In this video, let's look at what the GPT model returns to us after receiving the request body object. The JSON object returned from the GPT model is called a chat completion. Similar to the request body object, the basic info contained in the chat completion is shown on this list. You can find the data type and the definition of all of them. If the data type of a field is string or integer, the value is returned directly from the endpoint of the GPT model. The definitions of those fields are listed here. A complete chat completion JSON object looks like this. One thing worth your attention is the model field. Sometimes the returned model name might differ from the one you intend to use. That's because the model you want to use points to another model. In the example shown on this page, I requested GPT-4 Turbo, but the endpoint responded with GPT-4 Turbo 2024-0409. Because at the time of the recording of this video, GPT-4 Turbo currently points to that model. The other two fields I want to explain further are the choices array and the usage object. Choices is an array object that contains the responses returned from the GPT model. And the usage is an object containing the number of tokens consumed. The choices array contains one or more than one response returned from the GPT model. There are several return values in a choice object. The index is an integer, indicating the index of the current response. The first response choice from the GPT model will be labeled as index 0. The concept is the same as most computing languages. Numeric indexes starts from 0. Message is an object like the message parameter of a request body object. It contains at least a row and a content field. The value of the row field will always be assistant, because whenever a message is returned from the GPT model, each row is assistant. The content field holds the message returned from the model to you. Actually, there's a third field not shown in this example. It's tool codes. If the tool or tool choices object is used in your request body object, the chat completion might contain a return value of tool cost. Why do I say might? Unless you force the GPT model must call the third-party functions you want to use. Otherwise, it decides whether to call that function or not. Therefore, the use of the third-party function is not guaranteed. Hence, you might or might not get a tool cost value in a chat completion object. The next field is log props. Log props is the abbreviation of log probabilities. This field will return as null if the log props parameter of your request object is not set to true. If the log props parameter of the request object was set to true, then the endpoint will return the probability of a token occurring at a specific position based on the previous tokens in the context. There are many use cases for log props, such as classification text, retrieval evaluation, autocomplete, token highlighting, and so forth. I'll introduce it in more detail later in this course. Okay, the last field is finished reason, also an important field. The value of finished reason indicates the reason that stops the GPT model from generating content. There are 4 kinds of reasons, including stop, length, content filter, and the tool cost. Most of the time, you will see a reason with stop or length. Stop means the GPT model returns a completed response no matter how many words or sentences are in that response. Length means the response is being cut off because its content length is greater than the value of the max tokens specified in the request body. If you receive a finished reason as length, You can just simply send the word continue to exit to return the rest of the content. If you receive a finished reason as content filter, the content is filtered out due to a flag from the GPT model's content filter. The model might filter out potentially harmful or unsafe content. OpenAI also provides a moderation endpoint which allows you to check whether certain content is potentially harmful. But that's beyond the scope of this course. You can check it on OpenAI's documentation if you want. If the model decides to call a function specified in your request, then you'll get a finished reason as tool calls. Okay, the usage object. A usage object contains 3 integer fields: the prompt tokens, completion tokens, and the total tokens. The prompt tokens is the number of tokens of the content you send to the GPT model. The completion tokens is the number of tokens you receive from the model. And the total tokens is the sum of those 2 types of tokens. You'll definitely want to know how many tokens are sent back and forth between your application and the GPT endpoint, because that indicates how much money OpenAI is going to charge you based on the price of the model you're using. Great! You've learned the concept of chat completion. It's time to develop the C# classes for the request body and the chat completion objects.